There was no explanation of the rules at the beginning of the show. Just like Pride 1, MMA in the early days was very much like when you were playing a game as a kid. You only changed the rules when something happened that you didn't like. It's wacky, it's fun, it's not drug tested, a lot of it's fixed probably. Let's get into it. The first fight was between Royler Gracie and Yuhi Sano. Sano had a 50-pound weight advantage in this fight, and this was also the first fight that we got to see the iconic blue Pride gloves. The corners of this fight were also the competitors of the Pride 1 main event, Hicks and Gracie and Takada. A little fun fact is that the commentary says they were live in the arena, but they did not start live commentary until the year 2000. You'll see how apparent it is in the main event. Since the Gracies were pretty one-dimensional back then, the fight started off pretty slow for about the first 20 minutes. All that happened was Royler pulled guard a few times, he got a butterfly sweep, easily passing to mount, and he attempted for a few triangles, but he got thrown off. Obviously, Pride hasn't implemented the yellow card yet, because it was a very boring fight for the majority of it. Royler just laying on top or controlling from guard. It must have been in the family genes because Renzo Gracie did the same thing on Pride 1, showing why yellow cards are very important. The first fight of this card was just one 30-minute round. This was a very brutal fight to watch. After this went on for a while, Royler pulled his opponent's hair for leverage for ground and pound, and he landed a bunch of up kicks and he started doing major damage from bottom guard. After scrambling, he got on top and secured mount, and after a few punches, he got a very easy armbar. The second fight took place between Pride 1 veteran Akira Shoji and Juan Mott. Big stretch, who's a good boy? There was a very short feeling out process on the feet. Akira got it to the ground and then slowly worked his way to mount and then unleashed ground and pound. Juan turned to his back and didn't know what he was doing. He ate some more ground and pound before tapping to the rear naked choke. I wish he did that to Renzo at Pride 1 so he wouldn't have to deal with the train wreck coming our way. The next fight was a stand-up fight between William Rosmalen and Ralph White. Ralph White was the one who got the no contest in Pride 1 because he had the kickboxing match that ended when he got soccer kicked. I'd love to see another stand-up fight with the Bruce Lee style gloves. Since this is only the second event with Pride in Japan, I don't think the American and foreign fighters were used to how quiet and respectful the crowds were going to be, and I think that led to some slower paced fights at the beginning of Pride. The story of the fight was William used a lot of clinching and knees to soften up the body and also used a lot of leg kicks. William visibly started limping from the kicks, and he didn't have an answer for them. After wearing him down for a few rounds, William finished the job with a huge knee to the liver. The next fight was between Vernon White and the legend Sakuraba. There's quite a few reasons to be excited about this fight, with Sakuraba's son making his debut on the Rizin New Year's Eve card and finishing his fight very quickly. I thought it would be interesting to go back and look at his Pride debut against Vernon the Tiger White. Vernon White was one of the original Lions Den members, the gym run by Ken Shamrock. Their training was legendary, but definitely too brutal. There's very little footage out there, but the footage that is of the tryout. It's absolutely astonishing how much work they put in. Sakuraba is obviously a legend of Pride, and probably the biggest star to come out of the promotion, and this is his breakout performance. At this point, Sakuraba had one win and one no contest, because he fought the same guy twice in one night at UFC Japan. There was a fluke in the judging. It was ruled a TKO against Sakuraba, but it was overturned because it was in Japan, obviously. They fought later in the night in the main event. Sakuraba would submit him with an armbar to win the fight. This is interesting because nowadays, even in Japan, they wouldn't reverse it or restart the fight. They'd just be like, oh, you got screwed. The ref kind of sucked tonight. Whatever. Shortly after the fight started, he got hit with a big shot. Sakuraba went for a takedown, and after they scrambled, they got back to their feet, but he quickly got another takedown. He then secured the back. He went from an armbar from the back mount. Vernon escaped, and very impressively, he got Sakuraba's back for a few seconds. This fight was very odd because they had an agreement to go for grappling over striking and only use striking as a worst case scenario. So there's moments where you can see Vernon think and wait before punching Sakuraba. This just seemed very odd, like he's kind of afraid something's going to happen to him after the fight if he hits Sakuraba too much. As you can see him visibly waiting multiple times on back mount. It was very odd because this fight was broken up into rounds when the Royler fight was one 30-minute round. I don't know if this was decided beforehand that Royler just got the 30-minute round, maybe because it was better for his style and they wanted him to look good, or maybe they found that it was just very boring and they said, we're going to do rounds from here on out. This is how the rest of the event went. Sakuraba kept going for the armbar, and even though Vernon kept slipping out, he finally got it in the third round at the very end when Vernon basically put himself in it by turning the wrong way. Unfortunately, the next fight was between Renzo Gracie and Sana Kikuta. I don't think this fight deserves much of a showcase because I'm showing you right now of how I actually watched the fight. Neither of them could strike. The commentators even praised Renzo when he landed a jab like you do a child when he ties his shoes for the first time. Renzo would eventually get a guillotine in the 6th round because they decided even though Renzo had the most boring fight in Pride 1, they would give him infinite rounds to make sure he didn't lose. So they were consecutive 10-minute rounds over and over and over and over again. This is MMA hell. This is awful. Worst fight I've ever seen. The next fight was another stand-up only fight, but with a huge weight discrepancy. Tassis, and you try to pronounce his last name, weighed in at 214 pounds. George Randolph weighed in at 287 pounds. Again, I love to see the stand-up only fights with those Bruce Lee style gloves. I think it's so cool. We usually see these matches with huge weight discrepancies in MMA. I've never seen one of these matches in kickboxing, so this is going to be interesting. Tassis had a very interesting style, which was clinch the bigger man with dirty boxing and huge leg kicks, which I thought was interesting because you usually don't want to clinch the bigger man. George, who was ironically in traditional karate pants, was trying to low block the leg kicks. That's a great way to get your arm broken. Tassis would beat George up throughout all the rounds and win a very convincing decision. The co-main event was between Marco Huwa and Gary Goodridge. Both men were UFC veterans at the time, Huwa even winning the UFC 7 tournament. After Gary landed some huge shots, Marco tried to pull guard and Gary started unleashing some vicious ground and pound. Marco was able to create enough space to get one of the first leg lock submissions within MMA. The main event was between future Pride legend Mark Kerr versus Bronco Sikatic. Bronco was already DQ'd in Pride 1. He landed the soccer kick on Ralph White to end the fight early. He would do this once again within like 90 seconds because he didn't want to get taken down by Mark Kerr. So every time Mark would get close, Bronco would just hold the ropes and start punching Kerr in the back of the head and using elbows. Kerr would get mad and a brawl would ensue. Multiple refs had to run in the ring, and it's funny because Mark Kerr was on so much steroids, he probably was like 4 of those refs. Either way, Kerr won by a quick DQ, and I hope that we never have to see Bronco again, so I never have to pronounce his fucking name. I apologize for the short video, but with a lack of rules, it led to a lot of stalling, and this event was honestly pretty boring. I didn't want to bore you guys any more than I was bored for probably about 80% of this card. Comment down below what you thought of MMA without rules. Please like and subscribe because it helps a ton, and I'll see you guys in the next video.